We started off the series on management consulting. We said we will do 5 sessions, some long, some short. In the first session, we discussed meaning and scope of the term management consulting. We developed a perspective of the management consulting market globally and in India. We took a look at competencies required to be a management consultant. We engaged with how a management consultant is hired, who takes the decision, how is the decision taken, and also why a management consultant, either an individual or a firm, is hired in the first place. Lastly, we also took a look at how to consolidate our discussion of first session, and I suggested certain books, certain exercises. We move ahead today into the second session, and today's session is the heart of the entire series. It deals with the management consulting process. How does the process work? From the time you start making efforts to get an order, to getting an order, to starting of an assignment, to doing the assignment, to coming up with results and handing over the output to the client, and then having the last termination meeting with the client. So a step before the first meeting till the last meeting, and the entire assignment being in between. Today's discussion covers this whole sequence of events, and collectively this whole sequence of events is termed as the management consulting process. Let us go into the details of it. The management consulting process can be classified into its constituents in many ways. One classification, which we will use today, is based upon our reference book for the course, that is Management Consulting by Milan Kuber. And the book uses a classification which deconstructs the management consulting process into 5 constituents, 5 sequential constituents that follow one after another. The 5 parts which constitute the management consulting process are: first is entry, how you enter into a company, make the first contact, convince the company, get an order. After you get an order, comes the question of engaging with the problem at hand. And in that process, the first component is diagnosis. What is your diagnosis of the problem? What is the core problem? Is there one or multiplicity of the problems? Are they related or unrelated? Do they have to be dealt with together or sequentially? So the diagnosis. So first constituent of the management consulting process is entry. Second, diagnosis of the problem or problems. Once the problem is clear and you know what ought to be done to solve the problem, you go to step 3, action planning. How to solve the problem? You start planning and organizing for the actual implementation of remedies to solve the problem. So planning of action or action planning. And fourth is implementation or the actual action to solve the problem. And after the problem is solved and you hand over everything to the client, either it is the solution of the problem or the post-problem solved situation or a study report or an intellectual property to be generated or a license to be procured or a certification to be got, whatever was the assignment, you give the output to the client, and with that the implementation ends. And then at the end you have a last meeting called termination meeting. So the management consulting process is a 5-step process. Step 1, entry. Step 2, diagnosis. Step 3, action planning. Step 4, implementation. Step 5, termination. In today's discussion, we will go into details of each of these 5 components that constitute the management consulting process. Let us start our discussion with entry. How do you enter an organization? And before you make the first contact with the organization, what do you do? So you can look at entry in 3 parts. A pre-first contact part of entry, trying to get the first meeting or the first contact part of entry, and the meeting part of entry. So 3 parts of entry: pre-first contact, first contact, and the first meeting. 3 parts of entry. Let me give an example. Let us say McKinsey gives an advertisement in Business India or Economist or Economic Times. That would be a pre-first contact action under the phase of entry. Assume some CEO reads that advertisement and he needs consultancy services and he calls McKinsey. That is the first contact. Or alternately, after the publication of the ad, somebody from McKinsey calls up 10 people and one of them says yes to a further meeting. So the first contact in the second case happened from McKinsey. In the first case happened from the client side. So the pre-first contact is the advertisement. Then happens the first contact between the client and the company. Initiative can be taken either by the client or by the company. And after the first contact on phone or today on Zoom, prima facie both agree that they should meet and invest some time to find out if they can work together, and therefore a meeting is scheduled and then the first meeting takes place. So that is the third part of entry, the first meeting. And the fourth part of entry is whether or not you get the job. That is the fourth part of entry. So you can divide entry into 4 parts: the pre-first contact part, the first contact part, the first meeting, and getting the order and signing the contract. 4 parts of entry. And after this is over, the second phase of the management consulting process, diagnosis, starts. So let's look at each phase in detail. The first part of entry, the pre-first contact. Before the first contact with the client happens, what do you do? Individual consultants and consulting firms do different things. Some individuals, they make videos and put advice free of cost on YouTube or their promotional Facebook pages, or they hold general talks and invite everyone from industry and they give a lecture, or they hold a consulting clinic, and in the consulting clinic, in a group setting, they may give up advice or they may take a problem of somebody and openly give a solution so others also can benefit. Or they may give free feedback to industry organizations, which can be passed on to specific companies. Or in certain cases, they may even give free feedback to some higher up in the company. So these are pre-first contact measures, marketing measures undertaken by individual consultants with an objective to get a first meeting. Consulting firms do larger actions than individual consultants. Let us have some examples. A consulting firm like KPMG or PwC may do a study free of cost spontaneously on any sector of the economy and give the report, share the report with the industry association like CII or industry association of a particular sector, or they may do a study on certain aspect of governance, say health or education, and give the report free of cost to the government, state or center, and try to get into the good books of the government. One way of marketing the firm to the client. Consulting firms can also hold free seminars, which is very popular in the area of ISO 9000, ISO 14000. Companies which are into consultancy related to ISO certification, they hold free seminar to create awareness among industry. And from those who come, a few convert into clients or arrange for the first meeting. Some firms do explicit advertising in business dailies or business magazines or business events. Some consultancy firms like KSA, Kurt Salman Associates, in India, they used to work along with Technopack. It was KSA Technopack. And they used to sponsor and organize a retail summit, one of the best retail summits of India, and invite everybody from the retail world, all the decision makers from the retailing industry and industries related to the retailing industry. And experts from KSA would make presentations. And industry leaders also would make presentations. And that is how they establish themselves as leading experts, thought leaders. And through the conference, KSA Retail Summit, it used to be KSA Technopack Retail Summit, annual event in India. They used to market themselves in the industry. Some consulting firms work with industry bodies, say for example, Cement Manufacturers of India or Society for Automobile Manufacturers, and create sector-specific reports which the industry body can then use to lobby with the government for policy changes or subsidy or support. And through that, they get both into the government and into the industry members, companies. Firms also use free feedback for the government, for the companies, both formally and informally to get closer. So both individual consultants and consulting firms do a variety of pre-first contact marketing activities, and this pre-first contact work prepares the ground for the first contact. If this work is well done, the first contact doesn't remain a cold call, it becomes a semi-warm or quarter warm first call. Second part of entry, first contact. First contact can be a cold call from the side of an individual consultant or a consulting firm. First contact can also happen because of a repeat order. You have worked for somebody 3 years back and the person calls you back. First contact can happen because of word of mouth. You are a consultant in HR, your friend is a consultant in marketing. He goes to a company who needs somebody in HR and he gives a word of mouth about you and you are called. Or two industrialists meet at a club and they talk about something and it comes up that one of them needs a marketing consultant and another person gives word of mouth about you and you are called. Alternately, somebody can find you from web search, or you are doing web marketing and you reach the person, or it can be a professional reference where a chartered accountant refers you or a brother consultant refers you. First contact can also happen in government situation because of empanelment. Some government institutions, especially those dealing with micro and small industries, they keep a panel of consultants ready through empanelment process. And whenever need arises, they send the empaneled names to the user, which also usually is a government organization. So you can have first contact because of empanelment. First contact can also happen because of a body of management consultants giving you a reference. Take an example. In India, we have IMCI, Institute of Management Consultants of India. And it happened in Bangladesh, some organization had a need for management consultants. They got in touch with IMCI and IMCI communicated the need to all its members. And some of them got in touch with the organization in Bangladesh. Or first contact can happen because of listing in a helpline or an online directory. In case of consulting firms, larger consulting firms, they usually go through the process of empanelment, tendering, and selection. So for them, in larger orders, the entry process is usually on lines of empanelment, tendering, and selection. So these are all the measures that individual consultants and firms do for first contact. And you do first contact usually after the pre-first contact ground has been created. Certain caution to be exercised in the Indian situation and equally true for situation in South Asia, most of the countries. When you do the first contact, be clear that you are not going to offer free consulting service on phone or on Zoom. Some clients will try to do it. discuss their problem on phone and get a solution free of cost. So you have to be clear that the first contact is only an icebreaker, it's only an entry giver, it is not for problem solving. It is for problem hearing, not for problem solving. So try to be to the point and concise on phone. Use the first meeting only to first call only to hear the problem, details of the organization, their readiness to pay, and fix up a meeting at their place. This is better than fixing up a meeting at your office, because you get to know their place, the client's place, and you get to meet with people employed at that place and see the culture of that place. And that helps you to decide if or not you would like to go further in the assignment. If the client insists on coming to your office, make sure you structure the meeting in a concise way without giving away too much for free. And if the client insists on an extended meeting, then the first meeting itself put a consulting fee. Regardless of whether the meeting is at your office or client's office, put up a consulting fee for the first meeting if the client wants an extensive meeting. Delicate part is you have to impress the client but not allow the client to steal a solution free of cost. There are many clients who just want an idea and they say, we are there to implement, we will do the implementation, we just want to know what to do. And what to do, they try to get free of cost from the consultant. This is not so much of a problem at the firm level. If a company is hiring a management consulting firm, very unlikely they will practice this. But if a company has called an individual consultant, the risk of this is very high. So you have to walk a delicate line of saying enough to impress, but not saying enough to give away something free of cost. If the first contact is successful and gets you a first meeting, you already have traveled a distance from pre-first call to the first call to the first meeting. And now how do you prepare for the first meeting? If you are called by the client, and usually that is the case, for the first meeting to his place, the preparation usually involves these elements. Get familiar with the industry. Get familiar with the client's competitors. Get familiar with the client company. Develop a perspective of the company. Read through the news related to the company and related to the sector. Have a conversation with someone who is working in the industry. It's very valuable. Never miss that part. Have a conversation with any consultant friends if they are open and who have worked in that sector at some point in time. Do a back check on the company and the promoters. Very important. Don't get involved with difficult people. Draft out the terms of the contract if it comes to it. Be clear about expectations and constraints from your side and from the client side. Have a clear agenda and time for the first meeting. This is very important in the Indian context where meetings just go on forever. So have a clear starting time of the meeting and an end time of the meeting and a clear agenda for the meeting. Indian mind refuses anything structured. So we have to force this structure on the Indian mind. Try that the first meeting becomes the conclusive meeting, either ways. Either you get the order or you don't get the order. But try to avoid many meetings before a decision is taken. So try to make the first meeting the conclusive meeting. If not, have just one more meeting. Have a bouquet of good ideas to offer, enough to impress, but not something that gives away free of cost. Take with you a draft contract and then add, modify, delete as a situation may demand, but don't try to draft anything there. Take with you a draft contract. Let us take some real life examples that come from experience and learn from them where to be cautious in this phase. Industry in India, especially micro and small industry, even some of the medium industry, they feel the consultant will give a solution and walk away. They don't have an idea that consultant will work with us and facilitate a solution. They feel consultants have a solution off the shelf and we just have to buy it. So this has to be put into his mind that we don't have off the shelf solutions and we have to work with them to generate one. So this is one thing we have to be aware of in the Indian context. I'm sure this is true in micro and small industry in many other countries also. Second difficulty is a substantial part of industry thinks that consultants work only as commission agents and they deliver sales. So they will ask you to take your fees based upon sales and take a commission of sales. They don't realize that consulting activity can happen unrelated to sales or can happen unrelated to the commission mode of payment. Third, be very clear that you don't give away something free of cost. I'll give an example. Some industries organize false interviews for recruitment. They announce their vice president position, $100,000 a year. Everyone applies from the sector. They call for the interview. They get information during the recruitment interview, and everyone is eager to impress them because the salary is so large. And then they don't recruit anybody. They just get data from everybody in the guise of an interview. Similar thing can happen to consultants. There is a documented case where a fashion company invited ideas, sorry, a garmenting company invited ideas from fashion designers. And they said, you show us the collection. If we like it, we will buy it and manufacture it. And you get the royalty. In evaluating of designs, the designers of the company used to sit and they would note down the points designs which they liked, they would note down the major points and then they would say, we don't want this design, we'll get back to you. And with some modification, they would garment those designs out. So even without the designer knowing, the designs already have got stolen. So how to escape this stealing trap, even while we try to impress, is a very delicate thing in the Indian context. In most countries where intellectual property protection is not so strong. Last point is you being called as a consultant and somebody says, you are doing work for XYZ, why don't you sell my product also? It's like a salesman is selling 5 products and another company says, you anyway are doing the trips, sell my product also and you get the commission. Resist all of it, those are difficult things. So these are some of the points on which one has to be cautious, especially dealing with micro and small industries in the entry phase. The first meeting. After preparation of the first meeting, which we saw in the last slide, we go to meet the person. And what do we note there? Much of this happens unconsciously, but I have enlisted it explicitly so that it becomes clear. Everyone does this by and large unconsciously. Find the place that requires time far more than we calculate the first time. So it's good to go early. Very important to note the decor and the culture of the place and the people of the place and what treatment is extended to the people. If the location of the place, the decor of the place, the culture of the place, or the people of the place, and treatment extended to them is not of acceptable quality, it's very likely you are dealing with difficult people and your ideas will be stolen free of cost. Or they will midway change the scope of your work and ask you to do far more than what you contracted for, or refuse to give you the due payment. So if you find that the location of the place, decor of the place, culture, people, treatment extended to people is not up to the mark, better not get involved further with the company. The meeting starts with the pleasantries. Be careful about cultural sensitivities in exchanging pleasantries. Both sides are measuring each other. You are trying to see through them and they are trying to see through you. Limit yourself to the subject of discussion. Don't bring in discussion of politics or religion or anything else. Just be with the subject of the discussion. Allow the width and depth of your knowledge to come out. Allow your wisdom from past experience to come out. If he says something, allow the exercise of creativity to come out. Let him be impressed with your general intelligence. And they will be evaluating you in terms of 2 things, generic ability and domain knowledge. If you go there as a generic consultant, they will evaluate you only on generic ability because they know you are not from the area. But if you go there as a domain specialist, they will be evaluating you in terms of domain knowledge also. And there are 2 kinds of consultants. One type where the specialization is based on a concept, not on a context. For example, somebody is a consultant in brand management. It's a conceptual expertise. Somebody is a consultant in quality. It's a conceptual expertise. So the same person will go and do brand management consulting for FMCG, durables, automobiles, banking and finance. He would be limited by the domain. He will be only limited by the concept. So there are consultants who are specializing on conceptual abilities. And there are consultants who specialize in domain knowledge. They do many areas in the same domain knowledge. So textiles. So they will be doing 2 or 3 things, not only one, in the textile industry. And there are some who super specialize in both the concept and the context. So they would be doing brand management only in consumer goods or brand management only in industrial goods. It's a super specialization. Very few consultants do it. So you will be gauged, evaluated based upon how you place yourself, position yourself. If everything goes well, discuss the outlines of the contract and tell them I'll send a detailed letter later, and include if any changes have to be included from our discussion. Outlines of the contract have to very clearly state what is the scope, what is the time, very clear explicit statement that you won't come there every day and be there 10 to 5. So how many days you will come? When you come, how many hours you will be there? What will you be doing? It has to be structured out. Otherwise, you will end up being one more employee in the company. Let me give a couple of examples of how first contact happens. Once I wanted to publish a book, somebody came to know a publishing house and they invited me to have a discussion. I went to them, and in the discussion it came out they wanted an interior decorator and a friend of mine was one. So I gave the reference, and my friend who used to work as a consultant in interior decoration, he got the first meeting because of a word of mouth from me. Also, it was a professional reference. Second example, a company which was into grills, iron grills, they wanted a documentary to be made. Somebody was making a documentary, and then they were diversifying into water purifiers. They requested for somebody to do the graphics for the packaging of water purifiers, and the person who was doing the documentary gave reference of a graphic designer. So he got the first meeting through a professional reference. Similarly, we can have other examples, but short of time, let's move on. Now, the outline of the contract, if it is accepted by the client, then we go to the next step, and that is to send the client a proposal. This is very important, proposal. Never start your work before starting the proposal and getting the proposal accepted on paper. Don't start working based upon emails or WhatsApp communication. Never in case of verbal communication. Always send a written proposal signed from your end, 2 copies. Request the client to sign both copies, keep one with him, give one to you. Now, what should the proposal include? The proposal should include very clearly the scope of the work. Now, clients may not have idea about the nuances of management consulting. Suppose you go to a client as a brand management consultant. They will feel that you will do anything in the area of brand management for them. They don't realize that when it comes to evaluating brand valuation is a specialized area by itself. Similarly, creating brands for small and medium industry or creating cluster brands is a specialized area by itself. So we have to be very clear what we will do, what we can do. Scope should be very clear, that what is included and what is not included. Proposal should also do very clear communication of methodology. What method are you going to adopt to solve the problem? Because the cost, effort, and expertise all are different. If you are going to use a survey, it calls for a different expertise, different cost, and different time schedule. If you are going to solve the problem by focus group discussion, it gets into a very different direction. If you want to use in-depth interview, a very different solution. Be clear what is the outcome. Outcome may be that if you are doing a new product development survey, the outcome will be the 4 P's for the product, not the product itself. If you are doing a brand strategy assignment, the outcome will be brand strategy and brand architecture. It won't be advertisements to be released in the press or TV. So be clear about the outcome. If you are doing an assignment on sales training, it is not going to increase sales. It's only going to increase the skill of the sales force. So be very clear about the outcome of the assignment. Be very clear about the cost of the assignment and therefore your fee. You don't have to reveal the cost structure unless you are on a retainership basis. If you are on a retainership basis, you have to reveal the cost structure plus retainership fee, otherwise a consolidated fee. The proposal should clarify time needed and resources needed, especially from the company's side. What is the technical and commercial help you may require from the company if the assignment so requires? So all these elements say last one, if you are an ISO consultant, then if you want to make the company ISO compliant, certain technical resources and changes may be required, certain commercial inputs may be required from the company's side. So the proposal has to include all of this. The proposal also has to include the liability clause, that are you completely, partially, or not at all liable for the consequences that flow from the assignment. Say for example, you do a brand architecture assignment. Outcome of the assignment is the company should extend an existing brand and create a extended brand architecture. And after some years, the brand fails, the extension fails. Can the company sue you for liability? Or if you are a technical consultant, you install a machine, train the people to use the machine, and you go away, and then accident happens and somebody dies. Are you liable for that accident? So liability clause is very important, and mostly people don't take liability, and therefore either they don't take liability or they take limited liability, a partial liability, explicitly stated in the proposal that we are responsible only for 1 month after the end of the assignment, or we are responsible only if all the guidelines provided by us are followed. Second is indemnity, which is securing you from any consequences. If you can get indemnity, then of course liability doesn't arise. But if you cannot get indemnity, which is you are not, indemnity means you are not responsible legally for anything that happens in the company after the assignment is over. Intellectual property, it has to be very clear. For example, if you are using a standardized scale developed by you to study the customer, after the assignment is over, the company cannot use your questionnaire to do a survey on its own, because the intellectual property has not been transferred. You have only given a service. You have not sold the intellectual property. Similarly, if you are doing a training program, company cannot record it and then use the recording to train others. So be very clear that intellectual property is not being transferred, and if it is transferred, then a separate charge is kept for it, or a royalty is kept for it. This stealing of intellectual property is very common in India. I believe in most developing countries. Like advertising agencies may be invited to make a presentation to get an account. One agency gets an account, but every agency loses their ideas. The ideas get stolen almost as a matter of regular practice in business. Very unfortunate. Proposal has to deal with non-compete clauses. Most assignments have a non-compete clause that if you work for company X, you cannot work for company Y in the same sector for a period of 6 months or 3 months. You can also have a clause which says you will not work to the competitive detriment of the company, which is still a wider thing. So if a individual or a firm, consulting firm, is specializing on a conceptual basis, then you can sign this non-compete clause because you can work in other sectors. But if you are specializing in a domain area, then you cannot sign non-compete clause because you will be working in the same sector for other companies. Always take an advance and build it into the proposal and have a very clear disbursement line of payments. Take 25% advance or 50% advance, another 25% after some milestones are reached, another 25% when a provisional report is submitted, and last 25% after the project is over. Never invest your money. Always be clear of the last installment. If you are going to engage advertising agency, research agency, or any other agency, factor in their costs separately. If you are not one of them. If any intellectual property transfer, design transfer, copyright transfer is going to happen, cost it separately. So all of this has to be put into a proposal, and only after this proposal is signed in writing, in hard copy, and exchanged between the consultant and the client, that you should really start working on the assignment. So with this signing and exchanging of the proposal and getting of the order and getting of the advance, the entry phase ends. The first phase of entry ends. You get into second phase of diagnosis. So now we come to the second phase of diagnosis. We start with preliminary diagnosis, discuss with the client, and if everything goes okay, we move to final diagnosis. So we divide diagnosis into two: preliminary diagnosis and final diagnosis. Preliminary diagnosis is a concise study, often a pilot study, often a dipstick study. It can be done based upon first-hand empirical data. If there is budget, if the budget is not there, you do it on secondary data. So you can do it on primary data or secondary data. You may do it in an empirical way, or you may do it in a non-empirical way. In non-empirical way, you go into expert discussions, you go into focus group discussions. You dip into your own experience. You dip into experience of industry professionals. To do preliminary diagnosis, primary or secondary, in both cases there are data requirements. Whether you go empirical or non-empirical, you still have data requirements. And these data requirements can be fulfilled either by collecting data yourself, or accessing free data available in public domain, or buying data. So the need may be of standardized data or customized data. It may be available either free or paid. Or one may just do interviews and take decisions on that basis. Apart from these studies that we do by ourselves, either empirical or non-empirical, primary or secondary, using free data or paid data, using our experience or doing dipstick interviews with industry stalwarts. Apart from that, we do meeting with the company staff. Very important. Often solutions lie within the company unappreciated. Whenever we request data from any company staffer, usually mark a copy to the top management. Without that, often you don't get data on time. Occasionally, we also have to overcome internal resistances from the company to any study or action. These internal resistances may be just out of generic resistance to change, or because somebody's self-interest is getting hurt, or because somebody is not being included and heard. One of the more difficult things to tackle in preliminary diagnosis or even in final diagnosis is when the top management is split on the preliminary diagnosis or final diagnosis. And we have to do our best in people management skills to bring about an agreement as far as it is possible and round off the disagreements without anybody getting hurt by the edge of it. Once preliminary diagnosis is done and discussed with the top management, we go on to final diagnosis, and before that, never give a final resolution, even if it's clear to you. At the time of preliminary diagnosis, In certain cases, you may be clear about a final resolution, but never give it to the client. Always proceed step by step so that you don't make any mistake. So with this preliminary diagnosis being done, move to the final diagnosis. Second phase of diagnosis, final diagnosis. In final diagnosis, the contours of action, what needs to be done, becomes very clear. If it is a brand management assignment, how to develop a brand or how to evaluate a brand is very clear. What to investigate? Are we investigating consumer adoption process in the brand? Are we investigating brand aesthetics, brand extension, brand architecture, brand comprehension, brand valuation? What we are trying to do is very clear, and therefore the action path becomes clear. If it's a new product development assignment, what do we want the study to give us? Price, features, quality standards, all of that becomes clear. If we are going into retailing, are we going into retail decor, multi-sensory experience, merchandising, retail brand creation, private labels? What is it that we want to tackle, and what is the action plan to tackle it? That becomes clear. If we are dealing with price, then are we dealing with price elasticity, promotion, seasonal price variations? All of that becomes clear. So what becomes clear is what answers are we seeking, what questions are we trying to address, how to bring about a change, and what is the action plan needed for it. Once this is clear in final diagnosis, we start preparing the tools for investigation. Once we are clear what to investigate, we start preparing the tools. We discuss the tools, and these tools may be questionnaires, focus group discussion guides, in-depth interview guides. It may be instruments to measure dimensions in a quality control setting. It may be tools to guide documentation in an ISO setup. It may be tools to be used in training, whatever be the type of assignment. We start preparing the tools to be used and finalize the tools. These tools are not easy to create because they are standardized, tried and tested over years. And some of these tools may have to be imported from abroad or taken on royalty available online. We can't say we have no tools or tools are being developed. Tools already have to be ready with us as a consultant. We can't start searching for the tools after taking an assignment. Of course, tool development is out of question after taking an assignment. It would take 2 to 3 years to develop the tool itself. When it comes to final diagnosis, in normal language, we will call final diagnosis means writing down clearly the problems, the hypothesis, and the objectives, or rather the objectives, the problems, and the hypothesis, and creating the research methodology. In ordinary language, we would put creation of listing down of objectives, problems, hypothesis, and research methodology put together constitutes what we call the phase of final diagnosis in Wilhelm-Kuber's language. While doing this, an individual consultant accesses his own experience if he has worked in the same area, similar problems before. But more importantly, a consulting firm accesses its heritage. Take an example. Say Hyundai India involves, hypothetically speaking, Okay, let's take an example. Say the Tata Group involves a consulting firm for Tata Motors, hypothetically speaking. The consulting firm would have done a similar exercise assignment for some automobile company in say USA or UK or China. The consulting firm can call up its office in that country and ask the experts there who are in that team to give their experience, their wisdom, their tools, their outcomes, and share it with the Indian team. And in a couple of days, the Indian team leaps hundreds of miles on the knowledge track. So this cross-country discussion, this knowledge heritage, standardized tools collected by offices all across the world and collected in the knowledge management system of the firm, they give consulting firms an unbeatable advantage. Consulting firms often take up, not only consulting firms, even IT firms at times take up projects which don't have much profit but allow them to build intellectual property and tools. Take, for example, Infosys taking up projects of GST and India Post in the Indian context. There may not be much profit, but they get to build a product and create intellectual property and develop experience. And that will later be encashed. After the diagnosis is over, final diagnosis is over, we come to action planning. So before action starts, before the assignment actually starts in action, we have to plan out the resources and organize the whole action. For an individual, this is an elaborate exercise because he works on an outsourcing model. For consulting firms, this is a quick thing because everything is by and large already in place. Based upon the assignment, if it is district level or state level, you organize the team, organize the resources, collect the data, organize software and software operators as the need be, and very importantly, you do the mock training of the team. So if it's a questionnaire survey, ask the team who is going to do it to do a pilot, do the mock calculations, and see if the outcomes are going on the lines you think they should go. And is the goal being achieved or not? And then use the feedback of the pilot to retrain the mock team, slightly change the instrument if need be, and then draw out a time-based chronological plan of action and allocate tasks to each of the team members who will do what over the period of next week or next month, and how to monitor each of them. Monitoring is very important for quality. Without strict quality monitoring, quality doesn't come. So if you are looking at a survey, every evening when the surveyors come back with questionnaires, you randomly pick up a few, call back those people and ask if they were contacted and what did they say to a particular question. You also build in checks in the questionnaire itself, where question 3 and question 17 will be the same question asked differently. And if the answer to the two questions don't tally up, then something is wrong somewhere. So you have inbuilt checks into the tool itself, as well as you have a back check system with the response giver. If expert discussions are needed, then scheduling the experts is also very important. Very difficult to get their time otherwise. So all this goes into action planning. For individuals who don't have very extensive knowledge management system, they go to agencies like Nelson or libraries like IIM or MICA library, or some places where they can sample certain softwares for free online, or they go to some events to collect ready data sources, and this helps them in doing the action planning. This is the kind of an informal knowledge management system and the tool inventory source for individual consultants. And of course, I am talking of IIM and MICA because I am in the city. In every city, you have a local IIM and a local MICA library. Equivalents. So before the action starts, you plan and organize the action, train people, do pilot, evaluate it, schedule the experts, and with the entire preparation done, then you go into action or implementation. In implementation, the role of each should be clear. There should not be a double work, two people doing the same thing. There has to be a periodic review of implementation, preferably daily. If not daily, after a couple of days, if not after a couple of days, weekly. There has to be a clear calendar of implementation, which lines out explicitly chronological sequence as well as the method of implementation. There has to be a mid-course evaluation and advisory, hand-holding and continuing advice to everybody wherever needed. That's where the consultant comes in, his experience comes in. Change of tools if need be. Control systems, very important. Control systems to control quality of people, quality of the method, quality of data, processing of data. Every stage you need a control system to ensure quality. How much to do for free? As you get into doing, often you start doing more than you are asked to. And you have to take a call how much to do it for free. How much is customer delight and how much is self-exploitation? And you also have to talk about cost of distant consulting, because as the implementation starts, you start getting calls from the consultant, from the client, and they start enjoying free of cost distant consulting. So if it is too much, then you have to draw a line. What are the points of caution? In the mid-course, if the client takes a U-turn, it's a difficult thing. If the client says, I don't want X to be done, I want Y to be done, it's a disaster. If the final result is not clear or put in a freeze, not to be implemented by the client, that also is a difficulty. If the client says, apart from your work, do this also, one extra item, it's a small thing, that also is a difficulty. If it becomes too much, put your foot down and don't do it. Or the client praises you sky high and tells everybody, send your problems to him, he is great. Jump down from that throne. You will be doing free of cost consulting twice the amount that you have been contracted for. So these are some of the points and points of caution in the phase of implementation. Some more points. You have to build in an everyday review. If there are change of plans, communicated to everybody, not on a need basis only to a few people, but to everybody. Try to have concurrent actions rather than sequential actions of different teams working on the project. Team instruction or modification, do it in a group. Don't do it individual by individual. Always be involved in the action. Even before you delegate, you must do 5% of the work yourself. Never delegate without ever having been involved. Hands-off outsourcing is never advisable. Outsourcing, yes. Delegation, yes. But not hands-on. It has to be hands-on outsourcing, hands-on delegation, and delegation and outsourcing after having experienced it oneself. A schedule of periodic assessment of activities, quality, and resources. Once implementation is complete, check again. If you have to do something extra, do it, but never be short of what you promised. Some points of caution. Quality is not a default condition. You have to build in quality at every step to have final quality at the end. Be empathic with those who are doing it. It's easier to ask, not easier to do. Find ways where people are stuck. That is what is your job. You can't delegate it in a way where you expect originality and creativity from an ordinary person. Beware of wrong questionnaires. Often things go wrong because of wrong questionnaires themselves. You ask the wrong question or you ask it the wrong way. Beware that you don't end up proving what you wish, but allow the process to take its own logical conclusion. So this is about implementation. Lastly, in implementation, you will have doing the action. After the action is over, often it is data processing, discussion and conclusion, report writing, presentation to the client. And in the presentation to the client, the future course is decided. If it is an advisory, if it is an implementation assignment, then there is no future course to be decided. The future course is already done. I mean, the assignment is over and you are only presenting to the client. And you hand over report, data, ideas to the client. So this handing over starts here. It doesn't end here. It ends in the termination phase. But you start handing over slowly. Some part of the report, some part of data, some ideas. And if hand holding is necessary, you promise the client hand holding and keep doing the hand holding. If a report has to be submitted, you submit the report. If a client wants a meeting with somebody, you arrange that meeting. If it's an ISO certificate to be achieved, you make sure ISO certificate is achieved. Skill transfer to be done, you ensure it is done. Data transfer, you ensure the data transfer. So whatever be the deliverable, whatever be the assignment, you make sure that is done with the end of the implementation process. Lastly, we come to termination. The fifth and the last part of the management consulting process. At the end, we hold the termination meeting. It is not only a professional occasion, but also a social occasion. We design it as a social occasion, very friendly, almost like a semi-party. Only good things to be spoken of. In the termination meeting, make sure if any payment is pending, you get the payment cleared. Any feedback is to be given or to be taken from the client, give it or take it. Tell the client indirectly the return on investment now or in future on the assignment. That make sure the client feels he has got a very good return on investment by giving you the assignment. Get a letter of recommendation from the client, which will be useful for future bidding. Request the client for follow-up consulting or reference to other clients. Apart from the social talk of how good you are and how good I am, make sure that in an informal way, these points are covered up in a termination meeting. Involve the full team. from your side and preferably from the client side. Make sure it's a celebration. Do take some gifts for the clients, some mementos for the clients. If possible, record a video recorded interview of the client. If you have some business tip, give it to the client. If he has something, ask for him. And if possible, invite the client to some group invites or request him to invite you to some group invites. And this social occasion rounds off in a very sweet way the entire assignment. So this is the last phase of the management consulting process, termination. Thank you. So with this, we complete the most important part of the series, the second part, Management Consulting 02, the management consulting process. The first part was Management Consulting 01, meaning and scope. Today we completed second and the most important part of the series, Management Consulting 02, the management consulting process. Next session we will be doing Management Consulting 003, ethics in management consulting, client relationship in management consulting, cost and fees in management consulting. Thank you.